Pokémon Red, Green, Blue, and Yellow were runaway successes that took the world by storm in what is now referred to as Pokemania. You couldn't take 10 steps without seeing some kids doing something Pokemon related, and thus, naturally, sequels were to follow. Not long after the launch of the first games in 1996, development on Pokémon 2 Gold and Silver began with the basic idea of taking Gen 1, add more Pokémon, and new locations to explore, while also fixing the problems with the original games. With everything going smoothly, Pokemon's Second Coming was slated for a late 1997 release. Oh no. Sometime around 1998, the role of director shifted from Satoshi Tajiri, who literally made Pokemon conceptually, to Junichi Masuda, who would become the primary director for the foreseeable future. With that came a lot of changes to line up with Masuda's own vision of Gold and Silver, and thus as a result, the games were pushed back by a few years, with Pokemon Gold and Silver releasing in November of 1999 in Japan, and October of 2000 here stateside. Not long after, an updated third version of the games was released as Pokémon Crystal in December of 2000 in Japan and November of 2001 in America, and it brought along with it new features and changes along with a new quest line, as well as being exclusive to the Game Boy Color. Just like the first games, Gold, Silver, and Crystal were yet another hit for Game Freak despite not selling as much as the first ones. It was clear to most people by now that Pokémon was here to stay and wasn't just another fad. Now, onto how you can play these games for yourself should you choose. You can't. Okay, obviously you can, but allow me to elaborate. These games, like Generation 1, use a battery to save, except thanks to the real-time clock these games use, they drain much quicker. Gen 1 carts usually last around 15 to 20 years. With Gen 2, it's 4 to 5 years before you need to change the battery. These were re-released on the 3DS Virtual Console, but with the eShop gone, and these games costing way too much nowadays, especially Crystal, you're better off legally obtaining your own copy of the ROM and playing them in an emulator. Now before we get started, a few things. I'm playing Crystal version for this video, as the new additions it brings makes the experience much better, although thankfully you can't go wrong with any three of the versions. With all of that out of the way, let's get into why Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Crystal are better than you'd think. Upon starting, we can... Are you a boy or a girl? I'll get back to you on that. Yeah, for the first time in the series, we can select our gender. This is only in Crystal though, as in Gold and Silver, we only have the male protagonist. After setting the time, we meet Professor Oak, who introduces us to the world of Pokemon before asking for our name. Like last time, you can name your character whatever you want, but canonically these two are known as Ethan and Chris. After that, we awake in our bedroom, ready to start our new adventure. Downstairs is our mom, who will ask us what day of the week it is, as well as if it's daylight savings right now or not, and I definitely know it is. I definitely don't hope that goes away anytime soon. She'll also hand us our Pokegear, which is a cell phone of sorts, allowing us to make calls. We then can step outside into New Barktown, our hometown in the Johto region. It's a whole new world we live in, but our goals are still the same as last time. Catch 'em all, and be the best like no one ever was. We can head to the Pokemon Professor's lab, but outside is this mysterious red-haired boy peeking in who— Hey, asshole! Shoving me out of— Go fuck yourself! Anyway, we can head inside and speak with Professor Elm, who is researching the mysteries of Pokemon. He tasks us with heading to his acquaintance, Mr. Pokemon, and gives us one of 3 Pokemon to accompany us on our quest: the Grass-type Chikorita, the Fire-type Cyndaquil, and the Water-type Totodile. These are our starter Pokemon for this game, and I will tell you right now, don't pick Chikorita. You see, Johto isn't very kind to the grass type, especially in the gyms. Hang on, I got a PowerPoint made here. Let me, there. Johto has 8 gyms of its own, like how Kanto did in Gen 1. Now, Totodile and Cyndaquil are fairly competent when it comes to taking on the gyms. Cyndaquil isn't weak to any, and is super effective against 3 of them. Totodile isn't weak to any either, but also isn't strong against any of them. And then there's poor old Chikorita, who is weak to 3 and strong against none. Actually, no, make that 4, because the Ghost Gym might as well be Poison type. Chikorita is objectively the worst starter in the series to date, so for the love of God, do not pick Chikorita! Why? Why did I do that?
Why did you do that?
I don't know! fucking Mistake. You know what? No, that's your name now. Mistake. After that, we can make our way to Cherry Grove City, where we can follow this old man around as he gives us a tour showing us the Pokemon Center and the Pokemart. As thanks for following him, he hands us the map card for our Pokegear, which allows us to pull up a map of the Johto region. After progressing far enough in the route above Cherry Grove, we reach the house of Mr. Pokemon, where we can also find Professor Oak, who sees that we have a Pokemon and gives us the new and improved Pokedex, which can now record the data of Pokemon from Kanto and Johto, as there are now 100 new species of Pokemon, ranging from new evolutions to old Pokemon such as Slowking and Blissey, but also pre-evolutions such as Magby and Pichu. Of course, there are entirely new breeds of Pokemon as well, making for a total of 251 Pokemon to catch in these new games. He tasks us with completing the Pokedex before heading back to Kanto. Mr. Pokemon also hands us what Professor Elm sent us here for, this odd egg that was found at the Johto daycare. As we start making our way back, we get a call from Elm, who is clearly in distress, so we hurry back as fast as we can, only to bump into that red-haired kid from earlier who challenges us to a Pokemon battle using one of Elm's starter Pokemon. After his defeat, he tells us his name, which we clearly have a mental block on, as he runs off declaring that he will become the world's best Pokemon trainer. Finally, we return to the lab where the police officer asks us for the kid's name. Oh, wait, we can just name him whatever we want? And you will believe it? Should name him Ass Munch or Joke Off. You can make his name whatever you want, but canonically, he is known as Silver, and he will be our rival for this game. Elm takes note that Oak gave us a Pokedex, and seeing how we handled ourselves in our tasks, he suggests that we take on the Pokemon League Challenge to travel across the Johto region and collect the 8 gym badges and take on the Elite Four for a chance to become champion, to which we make our way to Violet City, while also adding a new member to our team, a Pidgey I named Along the way, we have to fight many trainers and even come across this cave that... I can't even see my own feet. Finally, we arrive in Violet City, home of the first gym, as well as the trainer school, which can teach you about the various status ailments in the game. Lastly is Sprout Tower, which we can climb only to find Silver being a little shit to the sage at the top. We can also challenge that same sage to a battle, where he'll award us the HM for Flash, which would be fantastic for that cave. Now it's time to take on the gym, which is home to the elegant master of flying Pokemon, Falconer, who has- Hold up! A level 9 Pidgeotto? You son of a bitch is cheating! Pidgey doesn't evolve until level 18! Anyway, after taking his Game Shark away, we claim the Zephyr Badge, as well as TM31 Mudslap. Upon exiting the gym, Elm will give us a call where he then entrusts us to take care of that egg from Mr. Pokemon, as it might hatch under our care, and it eventually does into the Pokemon Togepi. So after a trip to the Pokemon Center, we can pick up that egg and head to these mysterious ruins south of Violet. These are the ruins of Alph, and they are odd. We can solve these puzzles in the ruins that, when completed, drop us down into the bottom chamber, where we can encounter a new alphabet Pokemon called Unknown. Freaky, but whatever. By heading further south, we come across Union Cave, which you know what that means. While we're here, let's go over some of the technical additions and changes to battles now that we're really getting into the thick of it. 2 new types were introduced in Generation 2 to counter Psychic-type Pokemon from the first game. Steel, which is strong against rock and ice, but weak to fire, fighting, and ground, but resists a lot of types like Psychic and is flat-out immune to poison. Secondly is the Dark type, which is super effective against Ghost and Psychic Pokemon, but is weak to the Fighting and Bug type. It also cannot be damaged at all by Psychic-type moves. A change made to gameplay were stats, mainly the Special Stat, which was divided into Special Attack and Special Defense, which both benefited and hurt some Gen 1 Pokemon. Alakazam had a high Special Stat in Gen 1, but now is weaker in the defense department due to it having a low Special Defense. Meanwhile, Snorlax got a mean boost in Special Defense that it can make for a menace to take down. Another addition to gameplay is held items. Pokemon can now hold 1 item for battles, ranging from something like a Miracle Seed, which boosts the power of Grass-type moves, to these berries that can heal various status ailments mid-fight without consuming a turn. Lastly is the bag, which is no longer a 20-item limit sack that you just haphazardly shove all your shit into, but now has pockets dedicated to specific item types like Pokeballs, key items, TMs, and everything else, meaning you don't have to constantly stop at a PC to deposit your items into it, as there is now way more storage available as a result. Alright, looks like that waffling saw us through the cave where we now reach... you look familiar. Anyway, Azalea Town is home to our next badge that we can't get right now because some asshole is blocking the entrance to the gym. We can visit this guy named Kurt, who informs us that Team Rocket are at the nearby Slowpoke well to cut off their tails and sell them for a high price. The fuck? He rushes off and chases the guard down the well, where we now have to fight our way through them to stop them from harming any more Slowpoke. The leader of the small group tells us that despite being disbanded 3 years ago, Team Rocket are back and are making big plans. After saving the Slowpoke, Kirk will offer to make Pokeballs for us if we give him apricorns. These Pokeballs have unique stipulations to increase the catch odds, such as the Love Ball, which will increase the chances of success if the wild Pokemon is of the opposite gender. Yes, most Pokemon have genders now. Now, here's the thing, almost all of these balls are bugged in one way or another. The Love Ball actually will do the opposite of what it says it does and increases the odds of success if the wild Pokemon is the same gender as the one you have out, which, by God, the implications. Huh, Chikorita wants to evolve. No, not until I say so. Finally, we can enter the second gym to take on the walking bug Pokemon encyclopedia, Bugsy, who will go down easy if you chose Cyndaquil. Unfortunately, I have a mistake, but he... no, wait, she... What gender is Bugsy? Huh. Wood. After stomping Bugsy's crawling little friends, he awards us the Hive Badge and TM49 Fury Cutter. As we leave Azalea, Silver shows up and challenges us to a fight that he loses thanks to... and not the mistake. We can now enter the Ilex Forest, where we have to help this guy get his Farfetch'd back, and in return, he hands us the Cut HM. Huh, a Shrine to the Forest Guardian. That's neat. Outside of that, Ilex Forest is barren. There's only one trainer and barely NPCs except for this one guy who will give us the TM for Headbutt, which we can use on trees to encounter wild Pokemon like Heracross. After fighting our way through the next route, we can find the Pokemon Daycare, which we can drop off 2 of our Pokemon at, and if those 2 are, compatible, they can breed and give us an egg, and in Crystal, they even give us an egg for free upon visiting for the first time, which is really cool of them to do. Goldenrod City is the Saffron City of this game, as it's a bustling metropolis housing several facilities like the department store, the game corner for gambling, this underground passage, the radio tower that when we successfully take this quiz, awards us the radio chip for our Pokegear, which allows us to tune into the radio airwaves, the 3rd gym on our list, and this bike shop that is in the worst spot imaginable. I have this Subway in my hometown that no one ever goes to because it's in such an inconvenient location, and this bike shop seems to have the same issue. He offers to give us a bike for free and tells us to bike around the region as a form of advertising, and if you do bike around, his business booms and he tells you to keep the bike for free as thanks. Before taking on the next gym, I went north a bit and caught the 3rd team member for the team, this Growlithe that I named Best Girl because, duh, look at you, you're such a good girl, yes you are, yes you are. The, oh god, incredibly pretty girl Whitney is our next target who specializes in the normal type. And Pain. Her first Pokemon is a Clefairy that knows Metronome, which should already be a warning sign that says, abandon all hope, ye who enter, but for some reason it's not. Then she sends it out. This fucking Miltank is infamous for how much of a wall it is. High HP, high defense, it has its own recovery move, and it knows rollout, which gets stronger the more that it's used. This took me so many attempts that I said, fuck it, grinded the team up a few levels, and even allowed Chikorita to evolve into Bayleaf. Finally, after attempt number 6, I beat Whitney, who... give me my badge. Give me my badge! You After she calms down, she hands us the plain badge and TM45 Attract. North of Goldenrod is the National Park, which has the most beautiful piece of music I've ever heard from the Game Boy Pokemon games. We can also partake in the bug catching contest, which only happens on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays to catch a Scyther. Now, about that contest, you're not gonna win this. That's it. That's all I have to say. You see this guy? This is Cool Trainer Nick. If he shows up, you can't win! What's shitty is that most of the factors of the contest are almost entirely out of your control. Top it off with the new Sunstone, which is required for 2 new evolutions, is locked behind first place, so good luck getting that. On Route 36 is this strange tree that we can't cut down. This woman who is investigating it heads back to the flower shop in Goldenrod, and if we follow her, then her sister will give us the squirt bottle to use on the tree, revealing it to be a new Pokemon, Sudowoodo. Now we come to Ecruteak City, where upon stopping by the Pokemon Center, we can find Bill, who is visiting his relatives here in Johto, but has also just finished the Pokemon Time Capsule, which will allow us to connect and trade Pokemon from Red, Green, Blue, and Yellow. Yes, you can bring your old pals from Kanto into Johto. There are some stipulations, mainly anything new can't go back to Kanto since they just didn't exist yet. But still, this is incredible and required for Dex completion. I assume to encourage trading with the Gen 1 games, several Pokemon from Kanto cannot be obtained in Gold, Silver, and Crystal without trading, such as the Kanto starters, the fossils, and legendaries. It's not that big of a deal, but if you don't have the means to do that, then you can't use any of those Pokemon I mentioned, unless you hack them in. At the northwest point of the city is this burned tower that... Colonel, I'm trying to find that damned Pikachu, but I'm dummy thick, and the clap of my ass cheeks keeps alerting the Rattata! This is actually the 4th gym leader, Morty, who is investigating the tower along with this fellow named Yassine, who is searching for the legendary Pokemon Suicune. After another encounter with our rival, Silver, we fall down underneath the tower where we find 3 Pokemon who awaken and scurry off, except for this blue one who seems to take an interest in us before running away. These are the legendary beasts, Raikou, Entei, and Suicune, who will start to roam the region, starting my least favorite thing in all of fucking Pokemon: roaming legendaries. So, in Gold and Silver, all 3 will begin to roam the region, and each time you enter a new route or town, they'll change their locations, and you just have to hope you encounter them. You can't track them unless you've already encountered them once, so that their scene data is in the dex. But here's the thing, as if finding these bastards isn't already enough, they will flee from battle the first chance they get, so catching them is a pain in the ass as well. Now, here in Crystal, Suicune doesn't roam. Instead, it'll be in static locations across the Johto region where you just need to interact with it a few times before we get the chance to fight it as a static encounter later. But still, this is ass. At least it's not the worst it gets. By God, not by a long shot. After a quick trip back to Goldenrod and visiting Bill, he'll give us an Eevee that I named Vivi. Eevee got 2 new evolutions in Gen 2, the Psychic-type Espeon and the Dark-type Umbreon. After reaching a high enough friendship with them, which is another new mechanic in this game, it'll evolve into one of the 2, depending on the time of day. As for Solid Snake's gym here, well, the floor is invisible, so you'll need to navigate it to the best of your abilities. At least if you fail, it's not long or anything, so falling and having to restart is really just a minor inconvenience. Finally, we challenge the Mystic Seer of the future, Morty, who will frighten us with Ghost-type Pokemon. And by that I mean Ghastly, Haunter, and Gengar. This fucking Gengar though, Hypnosis feels like it's way too accurate on this thing, and because it's a final evolution Pokemon, it hits hard. So, surprise, I grind it up again. After taking down Johto's 2nd wall, Morty awards us the Fog Badge and TM30 Shadow Ball. After taking on the Komodo dancers at the theater in Ecruteak and obtaining the HM for Surf, we now have options as to where we can progress. If we go east, we will reach Mahogany Town and the Lake of Rage, or we can go west to Olivine City and Cyanwood City. This also goes for the gyms, as we can take on the next 3 in any order we want, which is great in concept. In execution? Well, okay. So, gyms 4, 5, and 6 can be tackled in any order, however the level curve with them suggests that you want to do it 5, 7, then 6, as the 6th gym leader has a much higher leveled Pokemon than the other 2. Now, that would be fine if the leveling of wild Pokemon and trainers weren't the same in both directions. No matter if you go east or west first, you're gonna be over leveled for the other side of Johto, which kinda scuffs the balancing up a bit. It's not that bad, as the sections afterwards do a nice job of catching you up, but still, this could have been executed better. I decided to head west to Olivine City, where the gym leader is tending to the sick Ampharos in the lighthouse and asks us to head to Cyanwood to get medicine for it. So after sailing past the Whirl Islands, we arrive at Cyanwood City and nab that medicine, but also scare off Suicune before fighting Yassine because that was mean of us, as we then fight the 5th gym leader, home of Chuck, whose roaring fists do the talking as I don't have strength. Chuck proceeds to demonstrate his strength by throwing a boulder with his bare hands, and after using the power of Bird, he hands over the Storm Badge and TM01 Dynamic Punch. Outside the gym, we can speak with his wife, who will hand us the HM for Fly after beating her husband's Pokemon to a pulp. Flying back to Olivine, we can hand the medicine over to Jasmine, who administers it to the Ampharos, and sure enough, it works. She heads back to her gym, but we aren't gonna tackle her just yet. On the way to Mahogany Town, we pass what is the least entered area in a Pokemon game, Mount Mortar, and try to jump Suicune yet again before reaching the town, where the gym is blocked off. We can't go any further east either, so north it is to the Lake of Rage then. We can pass through this gate where we get flat out mugged by 2 Team Rocket grunts. No way to say no, just all that money down the drain. After that bullshit, we reach the Lake of Rage, where the locals make note of a raging Gyarados that is not a normal color, and if we sail out to investigate... This is the Red Gyarados, which will likely be your introduction to a new mechanic in Generation 2, Shiny Pokemon. Different colored Pokemon that are insanely rare. How rare are shinies, you may be asking? Well, from Generation 2 all the way up to Generation 5, the odds of finding a shiny Pokemon out in the wild are 1 in 8,192. You may go several playthroughs of Pokemon and not find a single shiny just because of how insanely low the odds are. It sucks because these are really cool to have, but ultimately, it's up to luck. After catching or defeating the Red Gyarados, Lance of the Elite Four shows up at the Lake of Rage and asks you to meet him at the drugstore in Mahogany Town, where he uses his Dragonite to fucking Hyper Beam a guy into a wall, where we then find out that Team Rocket's hideout was hidden underneath the building. Team Rocket were using radio signals to forcibly evolve the Magikarp of the lake for mysterious reasons. After clawing our way through the base and defeating some of Team Rocket's executives, we shut down the radio wave system with Lance as Team Rocket flees, claiming that their experiments here were a success. We can now enter the 7th gym, the igloo to the teacher of Winter's harshness, Price, who uses the fragile and not very scary ice types. After Best Girl melts his team, he gives us the Glacier Badge along with TM16 Icy Wind. With 6 badges in hand, we can head back to Olivine City to take on the Steel-clad defense girl, Jasmine, who makes effective use of the new Steel type. You know what, Mistake? Why don't you take a crack at... This is why I don't evolve you any further! After melting her Steelix, she awards us the Mineral Badge and TM23 Iron Tail. Alright, so hang on, I'm getting a call. Yeah? Oh my god, Pokemon, turn on the TV! Whoa. Team Rocket hit the Pentagon! Tuning into the radio reveals that Team Rocket have taken over the radio tower in Goldenrod City in an attempt to reach out to Giovanni, their former leader. We quickly make our way back there for the 5th time, where we claw our way through many Team Rocket grunts and find out that the director is being held captive underground. After rescuing him, he hands us a card key that will allow us access to the very top of the tower, where we then find the new head of Team Rocket, who is just another executive. And after fighting him and winning, he sees that Team Rocket simply can't go on, and just as Giovanni did before him, he disbands Team Rocket, this time, for good. Team Rocket leaves in shame as the director thanks us profusely for saving the day and hands us the clear bell as thanks, while also telling us that Team Rocket was talking about something going down in the Tin Tower back in Ecruteak. Best we keep that in mind for later. Alright, we can get back to our quest now that Team Rocket is dealt with. We can progress east of Mahogany Town, where we need to slide through yet another cave, Ice Path, which, if the name didn't tip you off, is filled with ice. This is basically this game's Seafoam Islands, except there's no legendary to speak of here, and this is also where I found that shiny Golbat. Just need to, just flex that a second time. Emerging from the other side of Ice Path, we arrive at Blackthorn City, home of our final gym leader, the blessed user of dragon Pokemon, Claire. And this can be hard. Dragons are never easy to deal with, first of all, but top that off with this being the final gym, so they're high-level dragons. Claire herself makes use of 3 Dragonair and the new Seadra evolution, Kingdra. After crushing her dragon, she... Oh, come on! What is it with Johto gym leaders and not wanting to hand us their badge after we beat them fair and square? She tells us to head to the Dragon's Den and take on the test at the Den Shrine, where we ace that shit, and Claire is forced to acknowledge her loss and gives us the Rising Badge, along with TM24 Dragon Breath. With all 8 badges collected, Professor Elm calls us to his lab where he then gives us the one-of-a-kind Master Ball, believing that we can make better use of it than he can. I think now is a good time to check out what the radio director was talking about earlier. Heading back to Ecruteak City, we can take on the 3 sages that guard the tower, and after beating all 3, we can enter Tin Tower, where all 3 legendary beasts await. Raikou and Entei flee back into the wild. Suicune, however, goes on the attack. Now, you might think to use that shiny new Master Ball we got, but I'd advise not to. Instead, weaken it and throw as many Ultra Balls as you can, and in due time, Suicune will be caught. Using legendary Pokemon on your team can be fun as they are really bulky, however, I try not to since they can feel cheap, but I'll make an exception for this video. Just don't teach your legendary HM moves or something, that would be stupid. Finally, we can make our way to the Pokemon League at Indigo Plateau, meaning yes, we have to travel to the western side of Kanto. In fact, the route east of Newbark Town, where we started our journey, Route 27, is part of Kanto. After fighting some of the toughest trainers we've fought yet, we reach the reception gate where the guards validate that we have the 8 badges of Johto as we move forward into Victory Road. This place is bare though, no trainers, just strength boulders and wild Pokemon. At the end is Silver, who challenges us to one final match before the league, where he starts to see Pokemon as friends rather than tools. Finally, Indigo Plateau. After some last-minute leveling in Victory Road and stocking up on healing items, we head inside and begin the Elite Four challenge. First is Will, Master of Psychic Pokemon, and God, I thought this was going to be a bad omen for the rest of the league because I fought tooth and nail and barely came out on top. Next is Koga. Damn, that's one hell of a promotion. 5th Gym Leader of Kanto, now the 2nd Elite Four member. He wasn't as hard as Will, mostly because poison types are more manageable, I find. Next up is Bruno, returning from Kanto, who still specializes in the fighting type and is still weak to a fucking bird. Lastly is Karen, who masters the new Dark type. There's a joke I can make there. I'm not gonna. Anyway, she wound up being the easiest of the 4, which is odd to me. After beating her so hard that she asked to see our mana, damn it! We make our way to fight the champion, who is revealed to be none other than Lance. He cuts to the chase and gets to why we're here. As the Pokemon League champion, Lance accepts our challenge. The fight against Lance honestly can be easy or hard depending on what Pokemon you have. I've had times where this became a war of attrition. I've also had times where he posed no challenge at all, and thanks to Suicune here, this was one of those times, as Suicune annihilated all 3 of his Dragonites. With that, Lance is defeated, and we are inducted into the Hall of Fame as champions, ending the main story of Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Crystal. Of course, just like Gen 1, the Generation 2 games also have post-game content, but unlike the first games, these have, well, let's just say, a lot more. When loading back into our save, we receive a call from Professor Elm asking us to stop by his lab, which, dude, not even 10 steps away. You could have just came out here and, you know. Anyway, he'll give us a ticket to board the SS Aqua in Olivine City. Upon boarding the boat, we have to partake in this side quest to find this old man's granddaughter who has gone missing on the ship. After battling several trainers and getting the slacking sailor back to his job, we reach the cabin where the little girl is pestering the captain of the ship to play with her. As thanks, the old man gives us a metal coat which is used to evolve Scyther and Onyx into Scizor and Steelix when traded while holding it. With that, the SS Aqua arrives at its destination of Vermilion City in the Kanto region. We can explore around Vermilion and see that everything is still here, just slightly updated. The Pokemon Center, the Pokemart, the Pokemon Fan Club with the club president who is still way too much in the Rapidash, even Lieutenant Surge's gym, which we can enter and challenge him to a battle. He nearly killed my entire team, but for beating him, he awards us his badge. We can't go east as a Snorlax is blocking the way, but we can go north to Saffron City. If you haven't caught on, the post-game of Gold, Silver, and Crystal is re-exploring Kanto, but 3 years later. This is such a cool concept, and top it off with we can collect the 8 badges of Kanto again. In Saffron, we can quickly take out Sabrina before heading to Celadon, and after a bit of gambling to see how fucking rigged these slots are, we can battle Erica for her badge. Then, if we head down to Fuchsia City, we can battle Janine, who is the daughter of Koga, who took up the role of gym leader when her father was promoted to the Elite Four. And just like that, within an hour, we already have 4 Kanto badges. Now, you might have also noticed something about Kanto and its inhabitants by this point in the game. Let's start off with Kanto itself. It's been reduced in areas. I suppose to fit everything onto the cartridge, several areas in Kanto were truncated, significantly altered, or just flat out removed. The Safari Zone? Closed. Viridian Forest? A hedge maze. Mount Moon is just 2 rooms, and Cerulean Cave is fucking gone! Then there's the matter of the trainers. First, there aren't as many as there were back in Gen 1, which isn't that big of a deal, but they kind of suck now. Most of them have Pokemon within the late 20s, early 30s, with only gym leaders having Pokemon that are leveled around to where you are most likely at by now. It leads to most trainers in Kanto feeling like experience fodder, rather than actual challenges that require strategy. Lavender Town has seen a major change, that being the entirety of Pokemon Tower, you know, a grave site for dead Pokemon, was gutted out and transformed into Kanto's radio tower. That's kind of fucked up, isn't it? I mean, a lot of the graves were moved to a separate building, but there were way more graves than what's actually here, so what happened to those other graves, the bodies? Regardless, the director of this radio tower is freaking out because the power plant has gone down, and once we make our way over there, we find out that someone stole a part of the generator, and without that, the magnet train and the radio tower won't have power. We head to Cerulean City after receiving a tip about a suspicious individual roaming the area, who turns out to be a rogue Team Rocket grunt who doesn't speak English well at all. After defeating him, he tells us that he hid the machine part in Cerulean Gym, as we then inform him of Team Rocket's disbandment, and just like that, he goes. After retrieving the generator part and delivering it back to the power plant, we can interrupt Misty's, session, where she'll then return to her gym. Alright, she's a water-type user, so Bayleaf, you should be able to... By God, you did it! Mistake, you actually beat a gym leader by yourself. We can head back to the Kanto radio tower and receive the expansion card for our Pokegear, which will let us tune into Kanto's radio waves, including a channel that plays the Pokeflute. After using it to wake up the Snorlax, we can travel through Diglett's cave to reach Pewter City. Make sure to talk to this old man, by the way, as he'll give you the Silver Wing, which we need for a certain Pokemon later. We can also head to Mount Moon and challenge Silver one final time, where he decides to treat his Pokemon as friends before heading off. If you decide to head back to the Pokemon League on a Wednesday, you'll actually have a rematch fight with Silver where his Golbat will be fully evolved into a Crobat, something that can only happen if the Golbat has a high enough friendship with its owner. Brock! Jesus Christ, Bayleaf, that was impressive! You know what? You've earned this. Welcome to the team, Meganium. With 6 gym badges in hand, we can head south past Viridian City as the gym leader is absent, and stop by Oak's Lab in Pallet Town to say hi. We can also stop by Red's house, our player character from the first game, and talk to our former mom, where she reveals that she hasn't heard from or seen Red in a long while. Oh my god, what happened to Cinnabar? This place is just a rock in a Pokemon Center. We can find our rival from the first generation, Blue, who informs us that Cinnabar Island was destroyed by a volcano. He seems pretty upset about it, but when we ask him for a battle, he only tells us that he'll battle a person if they're a strong enough trainer before heading back to Viridian City. We can find Blaine, who has taken refuge in Seafoam Islands, where we can extinguish his Pokemon for our 7th Kanto badge. Finally, we can return to Viridian City and challenge Blue as the final gym leader of Kanto, and with his defeat, we now possess a total of 16 gym badges. Professor Oak congratulates us on our accomplishment and pulls some strings to grant us access to Mount Silver, home of some of the strongest wild Pokemon in Kanto and Johto. Before that, we have some cleanup to do, so after getting this girl's Pokédoll back, she gives us the Magnet Pass, which will let us take the Magnet Train from Saffron City to Goldenrod City and vice versa. First, let's catch the other 2 legendary beasts. This is what you should save the Master Ball for, by the way. Just save yourself the headache of having to catch one of these guys normally. After 10 minutes, Entei was captured, and 3 hours later, Raikou was obtained as well. With all 3 beasts caught, we receive the Rainbow Wing from one of the sages in Tin Tower, where we can then find the mascot of Gold version, Ho-Oh. Afterwards, we can head under the Whirl Islands off the coast of Cyanwood and delve deep underground to find the mascot of Silver version, Lugia. Finally, by doing some shenanigans, we can get the event-only GS ball from Kurt, which we can then place in the shrine in the Ilex Forest to summon Baby! This is the mythical time-traveling Pokemon Celebi, only obtainable via an event that you can no longer get legitimately unless you're playing this on the 3DS Virtual Console, where they give it to you after beating the game. Alright, the legendaries are taken care of, now it's time to enter Mount Silver. There are no trainers here, in fact it's just you and the Pokemon Center staff. The Cave of Mount Silver holds some rare items and Pokemon that really incentivize you to delve deeper inside. And you should. Waiting in the innermost part of Silver Cave is one lone trainer, who has been waiting here for the day that their equal challenges them to the battle of a lifetime. We are challenged by none other than Pokemon Trainer Red, our player character from the first games, who rocks a level 81 Pikachu! That's not the only thing Red has. He also possesses all 3 fully evolved Kanto starters, an Espeon, and a bulky Snorlax. That's not even mentioning that all of his Pokemon have great moves. All of it combines to make one of the best super bosses in all of Pokemon. I'll be honest, you might not win this your first time. It's hard. Really hard. But if you made it this far, it's only a matter of time before we triumph over our past selves. With Red defeated, the universe erases the loser from existence to restore balance to all things. And with the credits playing a second time, this ends the post-game of Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Crystal. Generation 2 makes a ton of improvements over the first games in the series, like balancing out Psychic types with 2 new types and splitting the special stat. Not to mention, there's just way more to do in these games. That's not to say Generation 2 is perfect. While it does improve everything Gen 1 did, what Gen 2 introduces needed more refining, like its mid- and post-game difficulty issues, roamers that just should not have been a thing in the first place, and a noticeable lack of new Pokemon used by trainers. However, Gen 2 also did a lot of good. Graphically, they look great. The soundtrack is some of the best the series has to offer, and Crystal placing importance on a legendary that can be caught during the main quest, but also giving them a unique battle theme introduces one of the series' most common staples to date. With Generation 2 over, Pokemon bid farewell to the 8-bit Game Boy, as Game Freak looked to the horizons for Pokemon's 3rd generation, which would take advantage of much more advanced hardware, those games being Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. Subscribe to the channel if that sounds interesting to you, and leave a like and a comment should you choose. With all of that said, have a great day or night. Peace.